Okay, thinking I could maybe do this in one take was like extreme wishful thinking, but fingers crossed for this one. So, the Seattle International Film Festival was earlier this month, and I'm just gonna talk into the void about a movie that I went and saw. So, it was this Spanish movie called Sundays, and it was really good. It was about this teenager at this Catholic co-ed school who decides that post high school she wants to enter a cloistered convent as a nun. She wants to become a nun. So that was interesting because I feel like usually when it comes to coming of age movies, it's about teenagers like rebelling, not becoming cloistered nuns. So yeah, that was kind of funny. But her mom had passed away, and her dad had some reservations about this plan or dream of hers, but generally was kind of indifferent. But her aunt was pretty vehemently against it. So removing the religious aspect altogether, I do think having concerns about a teenager going and living such a secluded life versus going out and having worldly experiences is that's a perfectly valid and reasonable concern to have. But also the aunt was an atheist, and so a lot of her misgivings about this stemmed from that. And I think in general the aunt's perspective and just the movie reminded me of how religion and spirituality are not typically viewed as just kind of neutral or positive interest, obviously not always, but just often. I feel there's this perceived indoctrinating element to those interests versus had this girl come home and said I want to be a journalist or I want to be a scientist, I think it's safe to say the reaction, especially from the aunt, would have been different, because those interests are viewed as expansive and conducive to intellectual growth and those types of things. And conversely, religion and spirituality, I was saying, is viewed as more regressive or restrictive. And this kind of goes hand in hand with how obviously everyone is entitled to their own beliefs, but I do think that often when people land on atheism as their own personal claimed belief system, it's based more so on the people with whom they associate religion and or spirituality than what they actually know about what they're rejecting. So I think often religious and spiritual people are viewed as kind of unsophisticated, maybe uneducated even, lacking in critical thinking skills or some variation of that. And so atheists will sometimes say well, that's not me, and so therefore I'm rejecting whatever those people are endorsing or subscribing to. And so I said, yeah, it's not necessarily based that much on their own interpretation or knowledge of the material or whatever they're rejecting. And I think they view people who are of faith or do believe in higher powers, higher realms, whatever, as just believing in something that's fake, right? Or something that's fantastical or just mystical or illogical, nonsensical, whatever. And it's it reminded me of this book I read on numerology, where the author was talking about how numbers and numerical systems and patterns and these things that we consider like really like fundamentally logical and stuff, like what exists in nature and kind of in the ethers in a sense, like whether or not we ever labeled them, or as like whether or not humanity was ever able to distill those things down into something like really tangible, like a mathematical equation. Like they still would have been real, they still would have existed, they still would have been logical, you know. And it's kind of the same thing, I think, when it comes to like the supernatural or metaphysical, or just like things that we maybe don't have the capability or capacity to like distill down into something that you can like see, something that you can like clearly label as logical or whatever, like an equation. And maybe we'll never like have that ability, but like that doesn't, by virtue of that doesn't mean that it's not logical or it's not real. And I don't know, I just like, clearly I found the movie very like thought-provoking and made me think of all of these themes and concepts. And it's really interesting for me, especially to watch this movie and just know that like had I watched it even like 2 years ago or something, I would have interpreted it like very differently. And I was thinking about how people who maybe haven't really sat in like both camps, like either like atheists or like believing in the supernatural or higher realms or higher power, whatever, would have maybe had a different kind of viewing experience or viewed the movie differently, and maybe seen it as more so trying to like forward some more specific narrative based on their own like personal view or like arguable bias or something, versus like, I don't know, when I was watching it, I guess it was interesting to think about how I know what it's like to like sit in both camps. I don't know, I'm just rambling, but yeah, it was really good. It was really interesting, and I just thought I should share my thoughts on this. And I don't know if anyone's even gonna watch this, but yeah. All right. Let me know if you've watched any interesting movies lately or not. But yeah, it's called Sundays. Like I said, it was so good and just really interesting. But alrighty, bye.